counterintuitive. I think I say that word more than any human in the world, because it probably should be the title of the book that I still haven't published, because everything about Feed the Cats is kind of counterintuitive. You think if you lose, you have to work twice as hard, and I say no. If you lose, you work half as hard, because you want to be fresh. One of the most counterintuitive things. This is really hard for coaches. I get a lot of stuff like, I'm in a small school and all my best players go both ways. Don't they need twice as much conditioning? And I was like, no, it's the opposite. You cannot lose that guy. That guy has to have a full tank of gas on Friday. And I know both of you have some two-way players, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably had more this year than normal, but we still we try to rotate them all through on offense. So our all-state middle linebacker fullback had 53 carries in the regular season, and then I think 159 on the season. So in the 5-game playoffs, he had 106 carries. He had some games of 25 and 30, and I think the most he had in the regular season was maybe 8. So not only are we trying to build depth in case something happens, but there's a lot of those younger guys we're getting reps in throughout the regular season. Even in the first halves, where every 3 plays we're generally rotating in a new backfield, especially early in the year. As you talk about trying to get your guys in shape. I mean, part of sprint-based football is in my opinion, is to substitute a lot. Even if the number 2 guy isn't as good as the 1. The number 2 guy fresh a lot of times is better, or should be better than their number 1 guy that's on his 10th play or 15th play. And so that's allowed us to stay healthy, is because we've rotated in so many guys. I think we ended up with 9 to 10 guys that had almost 300 yards or more rushing this year on the season. So we weren't giving the ball to, 1 guy for 300 carries, which were some of the teams that we played.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this, when you and I were in Sacramento, California last year for TFC, and we were sitting down having a beer with Kyle Bolton. And Kyle, of course, he's with the Rams now, but he was with TCU, and TCU had just gotten second in the country, playing the championship game. And they did speed training 3 times a week, max velocity speed training. And I asked him, I said, why do you do that? And I thought I was going to, it was like a lawyer where I knew the answer. And I thought he was going to say, so we're the fastest, most athletic version of ourselves at the end of the year. And I don't know if you remember this, but he said, health. We do it for health. So we were talking about all the reasons why you had 100% health throughout the season. And we never mentioned running fast. But I think there is some type of magic to sprinting as fast as you can that keeps you from getting hurt.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I mean, just we talk about it's the most, complex, violent thing your body has to do. And if your brain has to go through that and your body's exposed to that, you start to build that resilience up. And the qualities that you build through that, obviously from a, explosive athlete standpoint, is huge, because it's going to allow you to go be a better football player on the field on Friday. But it's also going to help, I think, reduce that risk of injury or be more resistant to it anyway. And, whether or not we can quantify that, or we'll ever be able to quantify that, I don't know. But, I can say that each of the last 3 seasons, in our last game of the year, whatever that point was, we had all of our starters available and healthy and on the field. And so to do that consecutively 3 years in a row, that's, never happened in my tenure as a coach. And it was a big reason why we, I think, looked at making the transition to sprint-based football when we did back in 2019 was, my first year as a head coach, I lost 2 returning all-conference offense defensive linemen. They were probably 2 of the top 3 linemen in the conference, across all teams. And all of a sudden we didn't have them on the field. And so it made it really tough to win football games that year. And I just, could not go through that again. And, ever since, it's been an amazing part of our success is, having all those guys on the field healthy.
I think the other thing is when you want your guys to run fast, then that helps you shape your week of practice. So if I know that I'm going to sprint my guys on, and in Illinois, as the playoffs went rolling, we weren't sprinting on a specific day. We were trying to get outside on the best day of the week. So if Wednesday was going to be 72 with the south wind, that's when we did our sprint work. And our practice, we adjusted things accordingly to make sure that we were getting that max velocity on that day, because here, some days it's 50, some days it's 40, and some of my classes are at 8 a.m. when it might be 60 by noon, but it's 48. So I think it helps you design your practice, because if you have a terrible sprint day overall with your team on a Tuesday or a Monday or a Wednesday, then you can directly look back at that, they're not fully recovered from the game, or you've done too much of practice. And then I think, from a weight room standpoint, and this is something that's in my TFC talk on in-season things you're missing that I've got from Corfist and Victor are just the different collisions that you go through. So we do a lot of different things in the weight room now. I mean, we didn't bilateral squat one time. We haven't since COVID, a little bit of front squat, but no back squat. We did a lot of things without putting a bar in our hands initially or on our back, because we're trying to teach, our body to handle when something hits it, whether that's, a pin press where we're hitting the bar, or we're catching things, or we're trying to train that co-contraction of those muscles, which is what you do in sprinting. Obviously, a lot of people then go in the weight room and stick a bar on their back and do a bunch of heavy squats. We did a lot of, speed-based things in the weight room all season too. And I think that definitely helps as well, and keeps our guys kind of feeling fresh, so they never really felt beat up from the weight room either. And, it's all connected. But, I still think a lot of programs are missing the sprint part. They're looking at is what are their squat numbers? How much are they benching? How much are they cleaning? We haven't Olympic lifted in years either. And so a lot of that traditional stuff we didn't do. And, people would say that our guys are fast and powerful. And, when you watch the state game, that was the talk of the state game, was how fast and explosive and how much we won. I mean, we won the line of scrimmage with a bunch of guys that were 175 to 205 against a bunch of guys that were 245 to 285. That I guarantee you they back squatted more than us and they could bench press more than us. But, a lot of times those guys aren't your best athletes. And can they do it out of a stance when they collision somebody, as opposed to, laying down and doing a bench press? And that's, where Victor and Corfist have been huge influences on my training in that regard in the weight room.
And you would consider all that stuff CNS driven weight room stuff, right?
100%. So, as Chris has taught me, whenever you put a bar in your hands, then your body, to survive, it deals with all the slack and it takes it up. So your body never has to deal with that slack. Well, when I'm out on the football field and I have to collision somebody, I don't get the opportunity to grab something ahead of time to take up that slack. I've got to just be able to go. And so that was a huge focus of our weight room all year, especially on Fridays, which were game days, is, that collision management. Can we teach our muscles to contract fast when we are either catching something or we're collisioning a bar or whatever the scenario is? And then obviously, whenever we did move a bar, we moved it as fast as we could. And so that was, we did nothing slow. There was no days where like, all right, guys, this is going to be our big leg day, where, we didn't do that stuff during the season at all.
I think that goes back to your elevator pitch that you talked about, Brad. Right away, you said if you don't see it on the field, then you don't train that way, or right. We want to train to mimic what we're seeing happening on a Friday night. And so to your point, what you just said, like what's happening on a Friday in a football game, it's those collisions. And so what are we doing, whether it be in the weight room or sprinting, you name it, it's, about being able to handle those types of things, and then be able to and it helps us execute better on a Friday. And I remember when Corfus came to the cities 2 summers ago with Cal, and Dan and Victor was there, and then that was the first time I had heard him talk about like collision management essentially, and just talking about how everything you do is a collision in football or whatever other sport, whether it's collision with the ground, with another player, with a piece of equipment, you name it, right? Your body is constantly having to manage those collisions. And so what are you doing to train that? And not that we weren't doing some of those things, but it just helps you just really dial in and focus on that being the emphasis of your training, because you're having such direct impact then on the execution of, those sport specific skills when it comes time to do it. So yeah, that's awesome stuff.
And I just, when I hear you guys talking about that, it just seems to go so well with sprinting that what you're doing in the weight room does not have to be counterbalanced by a sprint program. I always say that the sprinting makes up for all the bad stuff in a weight room. But if you're not doing any of the bad stuff, if you're doing like stuff that is CNS driven collisions, like you say, every step when you sprint is a collision of like 5 body weights going into the ground, and your ground contact time is like 1/12 of a second. That's a collision. I mean, that is not anything near what a deadlift is. And I'm not saying anything bad about deadlift. It's just different. And both of you, I think I know the answer here. Your teams got faster throughout the season, in season.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. I went back to, so, another counterintuitive thing is you would think that in the summer be your time to get fast. We're fast at the beginning of the summer, but by the end of the summer, and we're training, but kids are playing 3 sports. You talk about contact days, and our kids are dead in July. They are slower. They are tired. They need a break. And so I took our times on July 24th, and then, how much we dropped a lot of kids by half a second, in the 40 by the time, in November. But yeah, it's the in season. If you do it right, you can get faster. Now, things like the punter from the Rams puts a video out there of him squatting 585 for 2 reps, and so that. And I already saw it. Everyone's like, see, if punters can squat 585, then there's no reason you shouldn't be squatting 585 in week 10 of the season. And just some of that crazy stuff that people get involved in, and they forget about, and I've heard Chris talk about it multiple times that, the football season in and of itself, your body gets down to a fighting weight. So you might lose 10 pounds during the season just because you bulked up and gained all this weight. So then people see, well, your max is going down or all this different stuff. And they're so worried about that as opposed to what's shown up on the field that they chase weight room numbers even in season when, the reality should be what's their athleticism numbers. Are they still jumping well? Are they sprinting well? Can they throw well still and all that kind of stuff? And that's where we focus. If you asked our kids what their squat max is, they would have no clue, 0 idea. And that's just not something that we concern ourselves with.
Yeah, the only things our kids know is what's their max V, what's their 40, what's their truck stick. Very few weight room numbers our guys have any idea. What's their vert, some of those things, but it's all explosive movement stuff. It's not anything, with it like Brad said, with a heavy bar on our back or a bench or anything like that. So going back to Brad's mentioned about the summer, most of our kids will say that they're the most burned out, tired, sore, whatever by the end of the summer, just because we have a lot of multi-sport athletes, which obviously is great, but it's 2 and 3 sport guys, and they're getting, pulled between basketball, 25, Legion baseball games, AAU basketball. So they're traveling and playing every weekend. And that's the hard part. Then during the week, we're trying to, do our, off-season stuff with sprint and weight room and everything else. It's hard to expect a lot out of them. And Brad, I know you guys don't even do Mondays in the summer, right? You just do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because guys are so burned out. Guys don't recover over the weekend. Our guys are the most rested, the freshest, the healthiest during football season because they have the weekend off. They don't do anything on Mondays. In the summer, they're fighting all the different sports and having to go being pulled so thin from so many different groups. that's hard to recover, and it's hard to really improve a ton over the summer. So that's for us, in season sprinting and the weight room stuff. It's such an important chunk of the year because we feel that's when kids are going to be the most consistent with it because they're with us. We're doing it for 16 weeks. And then they're the freshest and the healthiest, during those 16 weeks. So it's a huge part of the total development of our athletes, when you look at like their 9th through 12th grade high school career.
And you guys just brought that up, and I think we definitely need to say something about that, is that you guys have like your entire basketball team pretty much on your football team. And so many schools can't get their basketball players out because basketball players, for the most part, are cats. They're athletic kids that can move. Basketball is a naturally fun game that can be played, like on, outside on courts and stuff. And I just don't think the typical basketball player wants to play football because of the traditional way of doing football. Is there any secrets that you'd like to share with coaches on how to get those good basketball players to want to play football?
I mean, I'd say it starts with the summer. We talked about contact days. We use kind of the bare minimum. I think we used 11 this year. Our state gives us 25. I think our basketball players played maybe 30 games. And then a lot of the good ones also played AAU from, they play AAU from the end of, mid-March until June. Then they play our team ball all through the month of June, and then they start AAU again in July. And so you got to be mindful of that. I'm mindful of that in training. So like I told Garrett, we take Mondays and Fridays off in the summer. So it gives them a little bit of recovery. It also gives them Friday to travel if they're, some of our kids played in these, big shootouts all throughout the state. And then when they do come back, sometimes they're beat to heck on Tuesday, and you gotta do what's best for the athlete and set them out of different things at times and have that communication factor. If they know you care about their other sport, for example, our 3-year starter at quarterback, basketball is his first love. He's a really good point guard, played all the AAU stuff, but he also went 36-3 as a starter at QB and was a phenomenal athlete. And, we worked around his stuff, and we don't ever schedule on top of anything. I was at their first 2 basketball games last week. So you got to go to those different things. You got to, keep up with it. You got to stay engaged with them. Same thing with the wrestling. I've been to, I think they've only had 1 wrestling match, but I've been to 4 of the practices, so you got to be in and out of those rooms. You got to communicate with those kids. Obviously I coach track, but I'm also good friends with the baseball kids. And you got, if you want to get those kids out, especially as the PE teacher, you're training all of them. You got to show interest in all those other sports, and you got to help them with their vertical jump, and you got to help them with things in basketball that are important. I let the kids have, don't grab the rim, but yeah, let's work on dunking at the end of PE and all those different things, which get them excited and know that, hey, coach cares about my vertical. He cares about me as a basketball player. I want to go play some football. And I think that's a big thing. We always tell our kids, if basketball is not your first love, but you enjoy it enough, you should play, because those kids that basketball is their first love will come and play football, especially at the small school. And we've got to kind of share those athletes, and you've got to help each other out as buddies and play with each other. And so we really emphasize that idea.
Yeah, we're so bad because when you go play in the state championship game, you tend to spill over into the winter sports season. And so in Minnesota, the basketball season started right after our state semifinal game. And I think there was 1 kid at varsity basketball practice because all the rest won't play football. So, we have all those guys, multi-sport athletes out for us, and 100% agree with everything that Brad said. It's supporting the kids in all that they do. They're with us for football, but then, the other 9 months of the year, what are they doing, and what can I do to help support you to be successful and whatever else you have going on. So from a training perspective, but also then going to basketball games, going to wrestling matches, going to track meets and baseball games, and just checking in with them and seeing how they're doing. And making sure that they know that you care. I tell guys, I just need you there in August, when the season starts. And if you have to miss a 7-on-7, or if you have to miss one of our summer, OTA practices, that's totally fine, because you got whatever else going on, and it's impossible to try to schedule and get to everything. We know that it's, you play the long game, and the more guys that we can get out, and the healthier that they can be, come season for us, it's going to put us in a better position to win football games. So all 5 varsity basketball starters were starters for us in football. And, we're fortunate to have all those guys out, because, we wouldn't be the same team without them.